So spring is in the air, the winter has finally gone and the trees are greening up, and carp anglers across the country are getting really excited for the coming season's fishing. And with spring in mind, what I'm here to talk to you today about is actually last spring. I kind of like developed a little bit of a baiting strategy for the syndicate where I'm at today, and I think it's fair to say that it transformed my fishing. So the crayfish pellets have been in the DNA range for a few years now, really popular pellet. The customers really get good results with them. But last spring we introduced two new products to the crayfish range. That is the heavy bag mix and the much anticipated Hydro Spod Syrup in the crayfish flavour. Now what I did was, on my syndicate where I'm fishing now, I wanted to do something completely different to what I'd been doing. I'd fished here for 4 years, kind of done okay, I'd caught a few, but wasn't pulling any trees up. So I wanted to do something on all 3 rods, go all in on a completely pellet-based mix. I kind of stumbled across something that became really successful and something that I now have maximum confidence in doing. So I'm going to talk you through exactly how I caught the fish I caught last year, what products I used and how I got the best out of those products to make sure that the bobbins kept going. I say I stumbled across this method, but there was quite a lot of thought that went into it. And with that in mind, in this little piece, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into quite a lot of detail about exactly how I use these products to catch the fish that I caught. And I think it's the small percentages that have gone into this that make it so effective. So we're going to start by doing the spod mix. And it is literally a third of all of the 3 main products. That's the Maxi mix, the mini mix, and the heavy bag mix. So whatever mix you're doing, just count it out into roughly thirds. That's the Maxi mix in and the mini mix. So you can already see I'm getting a real mixture of sizes in this mix. And the final part, which is for me a really important part in this mix, which is the heavy bag mix, which is basically like a ground bait powder in the crayfish flavour. And I think that's really important to the mix. So get them 3 products nicely mixed into the bucket, and then we're going to add the creme de la creme, the Hydro Spod Syrup in the crayfish flavour. Now this is going to do 2 things. First thing it's going to do is absolutely stink of the crayfish flavour. This stuff absolutely reeks. Second thing it's going to do, it's going to act as a binder, because I can't spod that out. There's powders and micro pellets. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that later, but we're going to add the Hydro Spod Syrup, and that's going to bind it and create a massive stink in the swim. So once you've got that in, obviously we're going to give it a right good mix together and create the spod mix. Okay, so that is the spod mix pretty much made, but what I'll do is I'll leave that for a couple of hours and let that liquid draw into all the products. So this is what I was actually spodding out here this morning. And the consistency that you get a really damp, oily, mini mix, maxi mix, powders. There's so many different sizes, and look, we know how effective the crayfish mix is. It's super, it stinks and it's really attractive to the fish, but I don't spot it out like that. That's not how I use it. What I do is, because it's got the heavy bag mix in there and it's got the liquid, you can actually mold it into ground bait balls that look like that. Now I use these for several reasons. The first reason is, when you are spodding tiny pellets, if you was to just pour them into the spod, once the spod gets wet, it jams the mechanism, it opens out on the cast, and it's just a nightmare. The other thing is, when the spod hits the water, especially if there's a bit of wind or undertow on the water, then pellets could spread into, you know, you could be fishing like a 7-foot radius, which is probably not what you would want. Whereas with this, it's dead easy. You just drop it into the spod, close the spod on it. It's really heavy and it flies because all the weight is at the bottom of the spod. It's really accurate for casting. And when it drops out of there, it pretty much stays like that and drops to the lake bed like that, because it's quite well bound in there, is that. And what I've found is, now I've done this in the tank in the studio, I've left it for a few hours and bits start to break off and you do get a little bit of a leak off of flavouring, but you can leave these for a few hours and then just tap them with your finger in the tank and they'll just explode, because inside that ball is all the flavouring. So you kind of like got an active bait. So if you kind of like, I don't know, you put, let's say 10 spods on your spot and the fish don't visit your area for another 5 hours, you've still got a really active area. Once they start feeding in it, it's kind of erupt into flavourings. It kind of gives off like a grey mist which is the flavouring that comes from the spod syrup. Now, what I feel is the real key to what I did here was I was fishing bags. Now, if you look at the size of that and pretty much the size of my bag, they're pretty much identical. Once that's dropped into the lake and that's dropped into the lake, they're going to look pretty much identical. So what I'm effectively doing here, the bit with the hook in it is exactly the same as the bit that they've just fed on. And in my opinion, that was the key to the success of this. Say like, for example, I used a slightly different pellet in the PVA bag, or I had a big yellow pop-up or something like that on there. In this situation, I don't think that would be effective, because as the fish are feeding across the area and they're getting into the flavours and they're getting active, they'll come to the one with the hook in it. If it looks in any way different, and I've watched carp feeding in the edge for years and years and years, if it looks any different, it'll arouse suspicion and they'll back up. You can see them backing off it. But in this instance, the one with the hook in it is exactly the same as the free offerings. And I feel that's why I had the success I did with it. And what I was finding was on this syndicate, I was putting 5 or 6 spods out on the spot and I was getting a bite in 2 hours. Now that's telling me 2 things. First thing, they love what they're eating. Secondly, it's hyper attractive. And thirdly, they haven't seen anything to spook off. They are really pressured fish here, like they are pretty much anywhere in the country. There was nothing there to spook them. So they fed confidently on that bag, hooked themselves, and I had some real success on it. Just drop him onto the net. There we go. Wow. Good morning. Look at that. Another magical langhorn fish. Yeah, 34 pound, and the decision to come on this trip has really paid off for me. So in terms of match the hatch hook baits that you're going to put inside the bag, we've kind of got different options. If you like to use a pop-up, then we've got the candy sticks. If you haven't seen these, you basically break them off and trim them down to size. You can make little wafters with them, you can make pop-ups with them, make balance baits, really versatile little hook bait. You've got your out and out bottom baits, your crayfish hookers, but my personal favourite to use in these bags are the crayfish wafters. Now you'll notice in these wafters that you get 2 different colours. You get a pellet colour and like a creamy off-white colour. So you've got 2 different colour options in there as well. So the smaller size of those in a small PVA bag, fished how I've shown you there, and I think that is a really, really mega way of pellet fishing and something I won't forget in a long time, because I had a string of fish from my syndicate, a really tough syndicate, and without question, fishing the crayfish mix in this method was a massive key to the success I had.